Life million years ago, giant frog. In a time long forgotten, when the earth was a symphony of primal roars and whispering winds, the world was a tapestry of untamed wilderness. Vast jungles stretched beneath skies painted with hues of fire and gold, where rivers carved paths through emerald valleys, and mountains stood as silent sentinels of time. It was a world of giants, dinosaurs that shook the earth with their steps, pterosaurs that danced with the clouds, and creatures so strange they seemed woven from dreams. Among them, in a hidden corner of this ancient realm, lived an unlikely hero, a giant frog named Kale. Kale was no ordinary creature. In a world dominated by towering predators, he was a marvel of nature, a frog the size of a rhinoceros, with skin that shimmered like polished jade under the prehistoric sun. His eyes, large and golden, held a quiet wisdom, as if they had seen the birth of stars. His legs, powerful and sinewy, could launch him across rivers in a single bound, and his voice, a deep, resonant croak, echoed through the forests like a call to the wild. But Kale was not just a creature of strength, he carried a heart that pulsed with courage, loyalty, and a longing for something greater. The story of Kale began in the Great Fern Valley, a lush paradise nestled between jagged cliffs and fed by a crystal-clear river. This valley was home to a tribe of smaller creatures, lithe mammals, scurrying reptiles, and delicate birds, who lived in the shadow of the giants. Among them was a young mammal named Lyra, a creature no bigger than a modern-day fox, with fur the color of autumn leaves and eyes that sparkled with curiosity. Lyra was an explorer at heart, always venturing too far from the safety of the burrows, drawn to the mysteries of the world beyond. One fateful day, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of crimson, Lyra wandered too close to the river's edge. She had heard tales of the great frog, a creature the elders spoke of with reverence and fear. They said he was a guardian of the valley, a solitary being who watched over the balance of life. But Lyra, ever defiant, believed the stories were just myths spun to keep the young ones in line. That day, her curiosity led her to a slick rock by the river, where she slipped and tumbled into the rushing current. The river was merciless. Its waters roared, pulling Lyra under as she thrashed helplessly. Her tiny paws clawed at the surface, but the current was too strong. Just as her strength began to fade, a shadow loomed over the water. With a mighty splash, Kale leapt from the bank, his massive form cutting through the waves like a blade. His webbed feet churned the water, and with a single, powerful motion, he scooped Lyra from the jaws of the river and carried her to the safety of the shore. Gasping and shivering, Lyra looked up at her savior. Kale's golden eyes met hers, and for a moment, the world seemed to still. There was no fear in his gaze, only a quiet strength that made Lyra feel safe for the first time since she'd left the burrow. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. Kale said nothing, but his deep croak rumbled softly, as if to say, "You are safe now." From that day forward, an unlikely bond formed between the giant frog and the tiny mammal. Lyra, ever curious, sought Kale out again and again, following him through the valley as he moved with purpose, tending to the delicate balance of their world. She learned that Kale was more than a guardian, he was a keeper of stories, a creature who had lived long enough to witness the rise and fall of countless seasons. Through his croaks and gentle nudges, he shared tales of a time when the earth was young, when the stars sang songs that only the ancient ones could hear. But the valley was not as peaceful as it seemed. Beyond the cliffs, a shadow was growing. A pack of ravenous theropods, sleek, predatory dinosaurs with razor-sharp teeth, had caught the scent of the valley's abundance. Led by a cunning alpha named Scar, they prowled closer each day, their hunger driving them to challenge the balance Kale had sworn to protect. The smaller creatures of the valley lived in fear, their days filled with whispers of the coming danger. Lyra, though small, was brave. She urged the others to fight, to stand together against the predators. But the elders scoffed, insisting that survival meant hiding, not resisting. "We are no match for the giants," they said. "Only the great frog can protect us." But Kale, for all his strength, was one against many, and even he could not stand alone against Scar's pack. One night, as the moon hung low and silver light bathed the valley, Lyra found Kale by the river, his eyes fixed on the stars. "Why do you stay?" she asked. "You could leap across the mountains, go somewhere safe. Why do you fight for us?" Kale turned to her, his croak low and resonant. Though he could not speak her language, Lyra felt his answer in her heart, "Because this valley is home. Because every life here matters." Inspired by Kale's resolve, Lyra devised a plan. She gathered the valley's creatures, mice-like mammals, swift lizards, and even the timid birds, and shared her vision. We may be small, she said, but together, we are mighty. Kale protects us, but we must protect him too. Her words sparked a fire in their hearts, and for the first time, the creatures of the valley united, not as prey, but as a family. The day of reckoning came at dawn. Scar and his pack descended into the valley, their roars shaking the earth. Kale stood at the river's edge, his massive form a bulwark against the tide of teeth and claws. But he was not alone. Lyra and her army of small creatures emerged from the ferns, armed with cunning and courage. They darted between the predators' legs, biting and scratching, confusing the theropods with their speed. The birds swooped from above, pecking at eyes and distracting the beasts. Kale fought with the fury of a storm. His powerful legs launched him into the fray, knocking theropods aside with bone-crushing force. His croak thundered, a rallying cry that filled the valley with hope. But Scar was relentless, his eyes locked on Kale, sensing the giant frog was the heart of the valley's resistance. The two clashed in a whirlwind of teeth and muscle, the ground trembling beneath their struggle. Lyra, watching from the sidelines, saw Kale falter. A deep gash marred his side, and his movements grew sluggish. Her heart pounded with fear, but also with determination. She rallied the creatures once more, leading a final charge. They swarmed Scar, overwhelming him with their numbers. A tiny lizard bit his tail, a bird clawed at his face, and Lyra herself leapt onto his back, sinking her teeth into his flesh. Scar roared in pain, stumbling, and Kale seized the moment. With a final, mighty leap, he pinned Scar to the ground, his croak a triumphant bellow that echoed through the valley. The pack, seeing their leader fall, fled in disarray. The valley was safe once more, but the victory came at a cost. Kale lay by the river, his breathing shallow, his golden eyes dim. Lyra rushed to his side, her heart breaking. "You did it," she whispered, tears streaming down her fur. "You saved us." Kale's croak was faint, but his eyes held a spark of peace. He looked at Lyra, then at the valley, its creatures gathered around him in silent gratitude. In that moment, Lyra understood. Kale had not fought for glory or survival alone, but for the love of a world he called home, for the lives he had sworn to protect. As the sun rose, painting the sky in hues of hope, Kale took his final breath. His body stilled, but his spirit seemed to linger, carried by the wind, woven into the valley's heartbeat. The creatures mourned, but they also celebrated, for Kale had shown them the power of unity, the strength of a single heart that dared to stand against the odds. In the years that followed, the valley thrived. Lyra grew into a wise leader, guiding her people with the lessons Kale had taught her. The story of the great frog became legend, passed down through generations, a tale of courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bond between the smallest and the greatest. And sometimes, when the moon hung low and the river sang its ancient song, the creatures swore they could hear a faint, resonant croak, a reminder that Kale's spirit still watched over them, a guardian forever etched into the heart of the earth. Millions of years later, when the world had changed and new creatures walked the land, the valley remained. Fossils of a giant frog were found, their bones whispering of a time when a single creature's love could move mountains. And though the stars no longer sang, the story of Kale, the giant frog, lived on, a powerful, heart-touching tale of a hero who proved that even in a world of giants, the smallest acts of courage could leave the greatest mark.